next session is called Dive into the Unknown. Sheena Yap Chan is a Wall Street Journal and Publishers Weekly best-selling author, a TEDx and keynote speaker. She spoke at NASA. You know I'm jealous about that. And founder of the Confidence Through Visibility movement. She created the Visible framework to help leaders strengthen confidence, visibility, and leadership readiness, and hosts the Tao of Self-Confidence podcast, ranked in the top 0.5% globally with more than 1.3 million downloads. She has delivered leadership programs for organizations including NASA, Live Nation, and UKG. Welcome, Sheena Yap Chan.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here. Yeah.
Excellent. So you want to tell everybody a bit more about yourself and your storied career?
Yeah, sure. Everything really started with my podcast. I started a podcast in September of 2015, interviewing women about their journey to confidence. I just never saw any women sharing about their journeys through about confidence and what they had to go through. And a lot of us always see the glory, but we never hear the story. And being able to share these stories were so important, which led to also having not one but two books with Wiley and being able to speak on stages, talking about the visible framework, the confidence through visibility movement. I've actually rebranded it with human readiness because it's really a lot of people don't realize it's the human readiness part that really stops us from moving forward. We can learn every single strategy in the world, but if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't have the confidence, the mindset, you won't be able to push forward. There's a reason why, you know, a woman in her 80s will have the mindset to run a marathon, and it's because of the belief in herself and the human readiness. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent. Do you want to just go into your topic? Do you want to do more of an interview? How would you like
Yeah,
to?
Q&A would be great. Just to
Okay.
kind of, yeah,
I
do
mean,
something different.
yeah, that's totally cool. I mean, why don't we first just address human readiness a little further and how somebody becomes humanly ready?
Yeah, I mean, human readiness is all about, your inside matching your outside, right? Each and every one of us is very capable of doing something great. But what really holds us back is how we see ourselves, how we're brought up, the trauma that we've been through. There's days where I've delayed myself, where I'd resisted, where I'd overthink. Especially growing up in Asian culture, we're not taught to go out there and do something different. We were taught to, do as you're told, stay in the background, never make any noise. And because of that, visibility is not something we're comfortable with, right? We're not taught to be visible. And most women aren't taught to be visible, right? We've been taught, like, oh, self-promotion is not ladylike. But who said that, right? Who decided to say that self-promotion is not ladylike? And if you're in business for yourself, if you want to advance in your career, it is important to be your own advocate, right? Self-promotion doesn't have to be tacky. It's a leadership quality. It's about advocating for yourself because when you advocate for yourself, you're also helping others do the same. So, for me, human readiness is important, especially now with all the technology in the world, right? We've been taught we have to be tech ready, this ready, that ready, but really what we need to do is to be human ready because you can have the best software, the best processes, the best strategy, but if you're not humanly prepared, you're not going to go out there and do it. A great example is the pandemic, right? 6 years ago, we were all locked down. We didn't know what was going to happen, but we thrive because of human readiness, because we were prepared to pivot, figure it out, and overcome it,
Yeah,
right? And this is about not being tech ready. It's just about being able to overcome every situation that comes our way.
right.
Because life is, yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. I was going to
Yeah.
say, I think of the pandemic a little differently. I
Yes.
think of the pandemic that is now the proof that we do have that human readiness. When it first happened, everybody was scrambling. Remember
Yeah.
all those like, let's get together online and drink, have happy hour. And like by the third month, it was like, I've got things to do now. But now there is no excuse. We've been through the pandemic. You
Yeah.
already know you can pivot. You know you can do it. So, our disaster plans have already been tested. And if you don't have one at this point, I think that's where, how could you not have a human readiness experience at this point, right?
Yeah. And we've all gone through, horrific things, right? We've gone through trauma, we've gone through challenges, but we've been able to overcome at least one challenge in our life. And if we can overcome one challenge, we can do it again and again and again. And I know sometimes diving into the unknown is scary. Believe me, I get it. Again, in our culture, we're taught to be stable, to have a steady paycheck, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what happens when, like the other ladies were saying, you get laid off, a pandemic happens, sh you know, things things fall apart. How are you able to move forward? Instead of seeing the unknown as something negative, it needs to be something positive because now you're like, you have a blank canvas and you can paint it however you want to paint it, right?
Right.
You can rewrite your story and you can start at any given moment. And especially as women, we've been taught that, we have an expiry date, but technically we don't. We definitely don't. We can start at any given moment, whether you're 20 or you're 80. I've read so many stories of women starting different things at every different age group, right? Like I just read a story about a woman who decided to go to law school at 47 and 10 years later she has an all-woman firm. And it's not because of a certain strategy, it's because of human readiness. Because she believed she can do it despite her age. Another example was I read about a woman in the Philippines who started marathon running at the age of 65. And most women wouldn't do that, right? Or we're told not to do that because we're too old and too this and too that. But she was actually encouraged by her eldest daughter to do it. And now she's a super marathoner at 79. So again, it's not the strategy. The strategy will be easier when we're humanly prepared, right?
Yeah.
And also, we don't have to know every single thing that happens, right? In my book, Bridging the Confidence Gap, I talk about this process of ready, fire, aim. So again, ready, fire, aim. Start before you're ready, take action, course correct as you go. That's how we get results, right? A lot of us feel like we need to be 110% perfect to go out there and do it. No, we just need to do it. I realized that the more I just took imperfect action, that's how I got clear on things because I was okay to make mistakes. I was okay to figure out what worked, what didn't work. Like in the example I mentioned, like you told, on in the introduction, you're like the founder of confidence through visibility movement. But now for me, that didn't work. Human readiness made more sense because that's what I've been doing all my life. And I wouldn't know that if I didn't do the ready, fire, aim. So I make mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes, but I also learn from them and it's helped me course correct and make be clearer and help others do the same.
Yeah. I always like to say that you didn't make a mistake, you just figured out the way not to do it, you
Yeah.
know? So you turn it into a positive. So something you said really sparked a thought about motivation, right? So if your motivation is just getting a paycheck and now you don't have that paycheck, I'm not sure you have developed those human readiness skills. So how do you get yourself in the right mindset for it? And then we'll move on to confidence.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I do have a visible framework, right? And so it's a not seven step, but seven pillars, and it's derived from the word visible. And so each letter of the word visible represents something. So V stands for voice, I is for identity, S is for spotlight, I is inner work, B is belief,
LE.
L is for leverage and E is for elevation. So 80% of the work of that framework is in inner work and belief. You need to work on yourself. You really need to work on your mindset. You really need to work through the trauma that you've gone through, or even if you're not aware that you've been through trauma, you know, find ways to be aware of it, right? A lot of us carry trauma from when we were young. A lot of us carry trauma that's not even ours. We carry trauma from our parents, grandparents, and so on. So intergenerational trauma is very deep. And so that's where it starts, the inside work, right? The things we have to unlearn and relearn, the stories we listen to, being able to surround yourself with like-minded people, being in rooms like this where we can talk about our stories and what we've been through because we can pick up something and be like, oh my goodness, this is it. This is what I needed to hear to move forward. So inner work is so important because our inside has to match the outside, right? So that when things happen like, oh my God, I just got laid off, what do I do next, right? You're like, okay, I just got laid off. Everything happens for a reason. It's a blessing or a lesson. Let's move forward, right? Whether it's to apply for another job, start a new business, whatever that looks like. And for me, I wish they taught this in school because I know math and science is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't learn math and science, but learning about confidence, resilience, mindset, that's skills we really need in the real world. Because what happens when you apply for a job and you get rejected 1,000 times? And it's not
Right.
easy, right? Rejection is part of the process. Like I get rejected all the time, you know? Every day I get like 1 to 5 like speaking engagements rejected. And at first it was depressing, but I realized it's part of the process because even some of the most influential people in the world have gone through rejection. So it's part of it. But if we don't work on the inner work to push through it, to say, it's just part of the process, it's normal, then we wouldn't keep going. So inner work is important, even if it's 5 minutes a day, like personal development every single day, whether it's attending a conference like this, reading books, listening to podcasts, listening to people's interviews, that will help you, right? And then building that belief, right? Learning that you are capable, knowing that you are capable. And being capable is just knowing you can do it. You don't have to know how you're going to do it. You just know you'll be able to do it. So when you have 80% of the work in these two pillars, everything else will be a lot easier. The flow would be better. So because we're talking about water. And so that flow becomes better when you really work on yourself, when you really get to the root cause. Because I can give you 101 strategies, but again, if you're not mentally prepared, nothing's going to happen.
Exactly. We have been doing Girls Who Print for 17 years, and I wish I could say to you, Sheena, we have resolved the confidence issue. It is done. Everybody's taking control of themselves and believing in themselves, and we can move on to another subject. And that is not the case at all. And it's not really an age thing. It's not just younger people that feel that way. And I think a lot of it has to do with what you said. How were you socialized when you brought up? I remember, I will never forget, my grandparents used to go crazy if anybody didn't finish like the food on their plate because they lived through the depression, and they were like, we ate potatoes for 3 years and you're wasting food. So it becomes this mindset of how you develop. But where do you think the breakdown is, or where is the moment that I know I have these skills and I know I can do this actually merge together?
I mean, every person's different, right? We all have different stages, different experiences. It's also important to trust our own intuition. I know as women, it's really hard to do that. Believe me, it was hard for me as well. But we're naturally intuitive. So if we know we're ready, we can feel it, right? We know there's like a sign, something triggers us. And so we need to learn to practice it. Will we get it right the first time? No. But the more you keep doing it, the better you get at it. And sometimes you do something and you have this picture in your head, and what really happens is a total 180. That's okay, right? Because you keep doing it, you look back and you realize everything fell into place. Everything happened the way it happened to get to where we are. So that to me, I think is important because again, as women, we are naturally intuitive. We don't exercise it enough.
Yeah. When we were having our pre-conference discussion, we spoke about that for one of the Fierce Fabulous Fridays, which is a video series we have on the website. I looked at confidence through a behavioral science lens because I wanted to take it out of emotion. I wanted to take it out of, family and social. And what the behavioral sciences said was that confidence is literally the result of a habit. The more you put yourself out there and you get positive feedback, you get feedback, positive feedback. Great for stepping up. Great question. I'm glad you asked that question. That was a fantastic session you gave. The more you get that feedback, the more confident you become in the thing that you want to step up to do. So when do you think is that moment where, well, actually, let me put it back for 1 second. So sometimes you do get negative feedback and you can grow from negative feedback in any way, shape, or form. The best advice I ever got was after a presentation that I knew bombed because they made me do it with somebody else and I'm a solo performer. And a gentleman, Andy Featherman, came up to me and he said, Deb, don't ever speak about a slide unless you can just turn around, look at it, and know exactly what you're going to speak about. And that advice gave me confidence to move forward. And I thought it was excellent feedback. But how do you know when to take on that feedback and have it fuel your confidence, or when to say, this is not something I want to take on?
Again, I think for me it's how we react to it, like being intuitive. It's like the more you keep doing it, we're gonna get feedback regardless. And sometimes when we do things, we're gonna see things that we did wrong. Like for me, like when I first started speaking, when you talk about presentations, I had all kinds of texts. It was like text heavy. And then I realized, oh, this actually doesn't work out. And so I just had to keep like pivoting it or recreating it to make it clear. And now when I have a presentation, I'm like, oh, this makes sense now. But I had to go through all that to get to where I am today. And also, like, we have to, like, I know sometimes we get the feedback and sometimes we might get offended, right? But we have to understand not, we're not going to please everybody. You take the good and the bad in everything, right? I always believe everything's a blessing or a lesson. So I always say, what's the lesson? What's the blessing? And when we can see things from that perspective, it's just we can move forward a lot better,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah.
Often the feedback that I feel is the most horrific is the feedback that I needed to hear. And at that moment, I just don't want to absorb it and take it on that it's the reality of the situation. I still want to ostrich it for a little while, but it brews and brews until I'm finally like, okay, I have to take this on in some manner. Before you talked about, capability and everybody at Girls Who Print, everybody watching in the chat or watching the replays, they all know that they're capable of doing things. But there's a disconnect between the capability that we think we have and then the capability we actually believe in that transforms into confidence, right? So please discuss that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sole reason why I wrote my book, Bridging the Confidence Gap, because we do have a gap, right? There's a disconnect with how capable we are versus how capable we feel. And really, what holds us back is how capable we feel. Because again, we're all more than capable to go out there and do it. Is it easy? No, definitely not. Especially as a woman, I get it. We go through a lot more crap, right? I hope I can say that. My apologies if I can't. But we
You
go
can say
through a lot.
crap.
Okay, awesome. Like we go through a lot, right? Like we get judged more, we get ostracized more. I mean, there's so many things we still have to go through. In fact, we have to work probably 10, 30, 100 times harder to get the message across. But if we don't do anything, nothing happens. And part of the reason why I wrote the book was that there was a stat that mentioned that total gender parity would be achieved at the earliest. Can anyone guess what year?
It's something horrible like 2076 or something like that.
I wish it was like that, but it's
Oh,
actually 2154.
oh, okay.
But that's when I wrote the book two summers ago. So now it's delayed 4 more years. So 2158. Can you imagine how wild that is? It's going to take at least 5 generations. And I think with the way things are going, I feel like it's going to get delayed even more. Like you look at countries like Afghanistan, where like women's basic human rights have been taken away, like literally taken away, right? They can't go out showing their faces. They can't even sing in their own homes. They're not allowed to go to school. And if one country can do that, you know, other countries can still do that as well in the year of 2026, unfortunately. And so this is why it is important to bridge that gap, right? To learn what's stopping us, what's delaying us, and how we can overcome it. And this is why having communities like this, Girls Who Print, where we can share each other's stories, share our experiences, be able to be visible. This is the important work because when there's someone out there who sees someone like you doing amazing things. They can say, if she can do it, I can do it, right? If she can do it, I can do it. And it becomes a domino effect. And, we have to like do this important work, right? There's a reason why you created this amazing organization because you understand all the stuff you had to go through, right? The prejudice, sexism, all those things. We've all gone through it, but instead of having that stop us, it should fuel us to keep moving forward. And it's not easy. I get it. It can bring us down. I've heard so many stories. So I totally understand this work is not easy because if it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
Yeah.
So, and in order to bridge that, it's really just a shift in perspective, right? How we see things, like failure, right? In school, we're taught failure is bad, but in life, failure is good, right? Failure is feedback. Failure is helping you pivot. And I wish someone taught me that failure was good versus bad because, I share this a lot in my talks where in the Philippines, I failed kindergarten for coloring outside the lines of a photo. I was given a photo co to color, couldn't color within the lines, colored it all over the place. I was given a brand new photo to color in, the same exact result. And because of that, I failed kindergarten. I moved to another school and redo kindergarten all over again. And at 5 years old, you don't know, you're five, right? You're a child, you're having fun, you're very curious. And because I didn't have the proper work done, I always felt like in my adult years, anything I launch, I just actually didn't even bother launching or delayed it because I thought I was just an instant failure. And it wasn't until I went to a personal development seminar where I found out that this is why I look at failure negatively. It's because of that time when I was a child, when really everyone failed in their life, right? There's famous failures because their failures is what led them to the success.
Yeah. And coloring outside the lines is rewarded now.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that wild?
It, that is a crazy story that you just told. I literally have no comment. You left me speechless on that one. I wanted to make one comment about visibility that I think is really important. You're absolutely right. When you see people out there doing it, writing books, getting their podcast to over 1 million downloads, and you're like, okay, she did it, is different than if she can do it, I could do it.
Yeah.
So you have to understand what your capabilities are and the way that you can achieve those things. But I also think it's super important to realize that you also have the opportunity to be the first person to be visible doing something. And that is very inspiring to people as well. So you don't always have a role model or a path that is exactly like yours. But to your point, there is more than likely somebody out there who's done something, even if, though it might not be on your topic. Launching a podcast and promoting it and successfully creating an audience. There's a way that you can learn about things like that. When Let's talk about you know, the that uncertainty thing. Water is very uncertain. At any time, it could pull you out. It could push you in. If it's a rip tide, you have to swim against the tide to get back to safety. It can knock you down and churn up old things from the end. So, how do you confidently embrace uncertainty?
I think it just takes practice, a lot of practice, a lot of unlearning old, old ways of how we're supposed to live. Like I had to unlearn a lot of things from my culture in order to embrace the unknown. And also reading other people's stories, what they had to do, they all had to embrace the unknown, right? Some people started with an idea and then just went for it. Like I just read on Twitter that mentioned like Stripe, that takes payments. Their first 2 years, they only had 50 subscribers. But look where Stripe is today, right? Even if they only had 50 subscribers the first 2 years, they kept moving forward. They just embraced the unknown and look where they are today. Another one was like Tofurky. I think the first 10 years they only made like 30 grand or something small. But look, now Tofurky's like a multi-million dollar like company because, you know, being plant-based is a big thing now, right? So
Correct.
so if you believe in what you do, like you really believe in your mission, you're gonna go out there and do it, right? There's going to be hardships. It's not going to be easy. I mean, my podcast, when I first started, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't monetize it. The first 5 years, I was like, I just wanted to share stories. And it wasn't actually until the pandemic that made me realize I could do other things, right? It led me to writing books, speaking, and just other opportunities, right? And I think also when it comes to visibility, a lot of people think they have to be everything everywhere all at once. And I have to tell people being visible is not about showing up everywhere. You can. It's about showing up in the right platforms in front of the right decision makers to get to those opportunities, right?
Hmm.
So it's like using social media as a platform, connecting with someone who can help you get a job or an opportunity. Like on LinkedIn, I've had posts that had 1 million impressions and nothing ever happened. But I sent one DM to someone who used to work for the publisher, and that led me to writing not one but two books. So again, being able to show up in front of the right opportunities, decision makers to get them.
I want to be your impressions when I grow up. That's all I have to say about that. Okay, we're gonna wrap up this discussion, but you'll be back for our panel. Thank you so much, Sheena. Amazing comments in the chat. I believe we have your links for the podcast and everything else. If not, if you could just drop them in
Yeah,
the chat. Uh,
I'll share
uh,
it here. Right
Perfect.
here.
Okay. Thank you so much,
Thank
Sheena.
you.